Good afternoon, everyone. How great was this morning? Some amazing announcements. Monica and I are excited to be here today to talk to you about one of those announcements. But before we do, we wanted to let you know that there will be Q&A after our talk. So if you use the Unite 2017 app, you can log in there. You can put in the Q&A code, SFO, and ask questions throughout our talk. And we'll be pulling them up on an iPad afterwards and answering them for you. We'll also probably pull one from the audience as well if we have time. So this morning, Chris showed off the new look and feel for Shopify. Now, Monica and I are going to give you a detailed look at Polaris, our new design system, and the tools that we'll be providing alongside it. We'll go over the individual pieces that will really help you build great experiences for our merchants, more efficiently and more effectively than ever before. Monica and I are extremely excited about Polaris and how it will help you affect the future of Shopify for our merchants. But before we do that, we want to explain why we think a consistent Shopify is so important for us at Shopify, and more importantly, for our merchants.
A consistent Shopify is one where every single touch point with our audiences feels cohesive, from our marketing materials straight to using our admin day to day. It's a Shopify that feels the same across small and large screen web, and one where merchants feel familiar switching to using our native applications. And with what we're going to be talking to you about today, it's the same consistent Shopify experience that merchants will have when they're using the amazing apps that you build for them.
Polaris is going to empower both our internal teams at Shopify and all of you, our partners, to build experiences that feel like they were designed by one team. Experiences that are consistent and familiar for our merchants. Experiences that will be built on strong principles and stronger foundations. Polaris is going to make building apps for Shopify quicker, it will make those apps more engaging, and it will make the overall Shopify experience stronger for every single person involved. And when it comes down to it, aligning around Polaris is actually one of the best ways that we can improve our overall merchant experience. And that's why we're all here in this room. Because if we make our merchant lives better, everyone here succeeds. And Chris already showed off some of the new things that you'll see when the design launches to the public. Search is more readily available. We've increased contrast across the whole interface. We've chosen colors that are accessible so that more merchants will be able to act with higher confidence. And we've created better page and type hierarchy so it's easier for merchants to find the information that they're looking for. But these experience changes aren't the biggest thing that make this better for merchants. The biggest thing that we can do is make every part of Shopify feel familiar, like it's all part of the same system. And that's where you, as partners, come in. Because as we talked about this goal of alignment and familiarity internally, we quickly realized that it was just as important for our app ecosystem to feel familiar and consistent as well. It's important for merchants to be able to seamlessly move between using our core Shopify UI and the apps that they rely on every single day. And we know that they're relying on the apps that you're building. The average merchant has between 3 and 4 apps installed, and they're usually installing those apps as quickly as 12 days after they've signed up for Shopify. Apps are a huge part of our merchant workflow. And this reliance on apps has only gotten stronger over the years. We now have to assume that apps are a big part of the merchant experience. And with the embedded app SDK, we've made it easier for merchants to switch between the core Shopify experience and the app experiences seamlessly. That means that we're asking them to context switch between very different UIs as part of their daily routine. And that's not the Shopify that we want to build. Like Chris showed earlier, we had this problem internally as well. While each of our individual design work was good on its own, nothing was consistent. You're all building great individual app interfaces on your own, but you don't have a North Star to align to when it comes to the experiences that you're building for our merchants. So this looks great by itself, but once you start layering in the Shopify interface, it starts to break down. Some of the colors are different, the places for navigation is different, and we know that embedded apps are actually a great way for developers to increase engagement. But when the design differs, it actually makes things a lot harder for our merchants. And that gets compounded when every single app is different. So when you start using these experiences together, as we ask our merchants to do every single day, it really quickly becomes overwhelming. Because all of those different user flows are happening within the same Shopify. Building your apps with our design system will make merchant lives better.
Polaris is better for merchants, and it'll be better for partners as well. We've heard the feedback over the years. We actually haven't been doing a great job in providing you any tools to build great experiences inside of your apps. Many of you have been reverse engineering our UI, guessing out what language to use, and having to do all of this without our direct support. And we know that you want to integrate more closely into our admin. Over 50% of apps in the App Store today actually run off the Embedded Apps SDK to do just that. So right now, I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to be improving your experience as developers on our platform. So Polaris is going to include a documented design system as well as UI components that you can drop straight into your app. That means you can spend a lot less time focusing on the interface of your app and more time thinking about the merchant problems that your app can solve. Using our components is going to allow you to leverage the expertise of our entire UX team. All of our components are built with the design, research, content, and front-end development backing of our entire company. So let us do some of the work for you so that you can focus on the really hard problems. Ryan O'Donnell from ShopPad has been working in this way for quite some time now. He had an early hunch last year that by reusing Shopify's design system, his apps would help solve some of those merchant problems, and his life as a developer would be made a little easier. Now, he had to do this work himself because Polaris didn't yet exist. But that work and that early hunch really paid off, because as soon as they started using Shopify's UI, merchant engagement with their apps skyrocketed. They saw that they were getting fewer support calls, onboarding new merchants was easier, and their uninstall rates dropped dramatically. And that's because building apps that match the look and feel of Shopify's core UI means that merchants immediately feel familiar with those apps. And developers can leverage this familiarity because it creates a lower learning curve and a lower barrier to entry for your apps. And this is incredibly important because as Kyle talked about the fact that more merchants are using more apps, more merchants are also using apps earlier into their time with Shopify, even during their trial periods. And we're actually seeing this trend repeat year over year. That means more apps are being used while merchants themselves are still new to Shopify. And so if you can lower that learning curve for your merchants, it means that merchants are going to start feeling productive a lot faster. And that gets recognized. ShopPad measured a 40% increase in merchant satisfaction when they switched over their UI to using Shopify's. So merchants notice this consistent experience, and that's important for app developers, because higher merchant satisfaction may lead to better reviews and more installs. An easier learning curve may lead to more merchant success, and that'll have an impact on your app's ranking. We're actually going to hear a little bit about app ranking right here in this track, but when consistent UI makes merchant lives easier, that can mean more exposure for your app. And that extends to mobile as well. We're seeing more and more visits to our web admin on mobile devices, as well as increased usage of our Shopify mobile app. So this behavior is really important to us, and that's why the Polaris UI is implemented to be responsive out of the box. So this is no longer a problem that you have to deal with completely on your own. You can rely on us. And so for developers, when you actually combine this consistent responsive UI with using our Embedded Apps SDK, it'll create a seamless experience across devices, but also across applications. Because when you use both of these things together, your app is now going to be accessible in the Shopify mobile app. You'll learn more about that integration also in this track later this afternoon. But developing a great mobile experience that fits into Shopify's mobile app is going to lead to a wider audience for your app. And speaking of a wide audience, I can't talk about partner impact without touching on the accessibility of Polaris. Accessibility means making functionality available to a wider range of merchants, no matter their circumstance. But it can be really difficult for development teams to actually implement accessibility, especially if you're not an expert already. That's why you can lean on our expertise, because we're baking it into Polaris out of the box. Our design system was built with high color contrast and improved legibility. We use plain language over jargon. And for developers, our UI components are being tested with screen readers and work with keyboards alone. That means you can have the peace of mind that when starting off with Polaris, your work is going to be set up to work with a larger number of merchants. This is something we're incredibly proud to offer to the partner community and back to our merchants. Now, you might be getting worried that in this push to consistency, your own brand may be diminished. But it's actually incredibly important for us, for merchants to be able to connect directly with partners, and for merchants to be able to recognize the partners that are having the biggest impact on their business. And so that's why we want to include a clear call-out at the top of every single app to our partners. That's going to include your name, your logo, and your links. We know your brand is important, and so we want to make sure it stays highlighted. So with all of this work done up front, you're going to be shipping your apps and getting them into the hands of merchants faster than ever. No more starting from scratch. We've done a lot of the groundwork for you. Polaris is going to speed up every aspect of shipping an app, from your wireframing stage to your high-fidelity mockups, straight through to your UI development, all so that you can ship even faster. So we've talked a lot about why we're excited about Polaris, and I bet you're ready to start looking at some of the details. We've talked a lot about the visuals, and Polaris is certainly beautiful, but it's much more than skin deep. It documents and makes available every piece of how the UX team thinks about building great experiences. And this is something that we want to share with our partners so that together we're making better decisions when we're building interfaces. Polaris really begins with great UX. And at Shopify, we view UX as the convergence of 4 distinct disciplines: research, content, design, and front-end development. Each one of these has a distinct impact on the merchant, and that's why we're going to be touching on all of these throughout different parts of Polaris. From the great content support that we're going to be providing, the UX rationale, the visual components, and the UI details. Kyle's now going to run through some more of those details.
So the most important way for us to begin creating consistent interfaces together is for us to actually align in how we think about creating those great experiences. So helping you understand how we think about UX at Shopify is really the foundation of Polaris. And that's why the first thing that you'll see when you check out the Polaris page is our principles. These are the beliefs that we hold about building great experiences for our merchants. We wanted to give you the insight into how we make the decisions so that you're able to make decisions with greater confidence. Another huge part of making consistently great experiences for our merchants comes from the language that we use when we speak to them. Content is a key experience element for us, and just like we want to think consistently, we want to speak consistently as well. Our content strategy team has developed some amazing guidelines for writing content for your interfaces. And we know this is something that partners have been asking for a long time, and with Polaris, we're finally able to give it to you. This includes detailed voice and tone guidelines that break down how and why we write the way that we do. It includes content standards that help you understand how to think strategically about the language in your products and your apps. It also includes specific examples so you can see how context changes the tone that you might use. And if you've never thought about content in this way before, don't worry. We've also included great guides on how to write like Shopify that go into how we use plain language to communicate, how to write great documentation for your users, and how to provide clear direction to your merchants through the language you choose. Polaris also includes information on grammar, mechanics, and vocabulary, so you don't have to write or guess about how we write dates or display currencies or what verbs you should use for your actions. And I know this sounds like a lot of little things, but this really goes a long way to building a consistent, familiar place for our merchants. And while we said that the visuals weren't the foundation or the focus of Polaris, they're still a huge part of it. So for the designers in the room, we know that we're not going to be able to cover all of your potential use cases in your apps. So to help you extend our system, we're giving you access to all of the visual guidelines that we use to make decisions as well. Polaris includes a huge section on the way that we think about color. And we use color very purposefully in our UI. This guide shows you the principles and the thinking behind those decisions. It also gives you a detailed palette that you can use as you build out your interfaces and guidelines for usage for each color. There's a detailed typography section that breaks down our type hierarchy and scale. It includes clear examples and do's and don'ts so you can quickly make great page layout decisions. So those 3 things, thinking, sounding, and looking like Shopify, those are the fundamentals of Polaris. They give you a really great foundation to build something just the way that we do. But this next part is actually the one that I'm the most excited about. Because Polaris isn't just a web development style guide. We want to show you how all of those 3 pieces come together to create the components that make up our interfaces. Because merchants aren't just looking at those interfaces or reading them, they're using them. So we're providing you great guidelines on how to make your interfaces work like ours as well. So Polaris includes detailed documentation for every single one of our components, and there's over 40 of them. These go into detail on all of our thinking behind these design patterns. We've spent a ton of time on these pages, and we hope that by providing all of this behind-the-scenes detail, you're going to be able to build interfaces that work like ours quickly and more easily. Each page has rationale for every component. It includes the problem that they solve and why we think that's a good solution. You can easily switch between all of the variations and understand how and why we use those. They include examples of how to use them well and what you should try to avoid, what we've seen as mistakes in the past. So all of that documentation is a huge part of Polaris. And again, this is the exact same documentation that our internal teams use when we build our experiences. But we know that there's a lot more that you need to actually build this stuff out. So Chris hinted at some of these things earlier, but we're providing you some great tooling to help you get started. For designers, there's a unified UI kit file in Sketch. It's well organized, it's documented, and it'll be kept up to date so that you and your design team can quickly compose high-fidelity mockups and prototypes of your pages before you start developing. Our designers have been using this internally for a while, and they love how fast they can get their ideas on screen. It has all of our components in one place, so you can quickly copy and paste them into your screens. It uses advanced Sketch features like symbol overrides for speed, so you can change everything that you need to in one spot. It has fully built page examples, so you can see how all of these components actually work together. And of course, for you here in this room, it includes a special section on apps and channels, so you can see what we expect those to actually look like. It's got everything that you need to get started building interfaces for Shopify right away. If you have an idea for an app, you're going to be able to mock it up in minutes using this tool. And as Monica is about to show you, since every component is also detailed in our developer tools, communicating with your development team is going to be easy as well.
So now I'd like to introduce some of the developer-facing features of Polaris. We want to integrate into your developer workflows so that all those assets that Kyle just talked about become available for your entire dev team. So to start, at last year's Unite, we actually released our beta of our Channels UI kit, which included compiled CSS for building up all the styles needed for channel apps. We'll be including the same with Polaris, only this time including all of the CSS needed to build all of those design components for any kind of app. All of that CSS will be prefixed with the name Polaris, so we can avoid any local styling collisions with any other style sheets you're bringing in. And it'll follow a naming convention that's easy to follow. But we also got a lot of feedback last year that although the compiled CSS was really useful, it wasn't as powerful as many had hoped. A lot of you were actually hoping to get at the Sass underneath that CSS, so you can use things like variables and mixins. So this time around, we want to release those files as well. And they're also going to be created in a developer-friendly way so that you can either import an index of all of our components or actually pick and choose only the components and their dependencies you'll need for your app. Both of them are going to be hosted on our CDN and available as downloads from our style guide. Now, we can only get so far by releasing just static assets for you. In order to build the truly consistent UX that we so strongly believe in, we have to start thinking about the HTML that's running underneath it and easier ways for you to actually put everything together. And so to really bring Polaris to life, we're going to be releasing a library of React components that will actually help you build these components and maintain them. All of our components are going to be the building blocks you need for building things like forms, typography, layout, and common UI elements like tooltips and tabs. We're also going to be releasing a few utility components for the things that you're commonly going to need to do in React, like adding global event listeners. All of our React components are going to be documented in our style guide, that same style guide that shows all of the design rationale. And all of those live demos are actually being powered by the React code that we're going to be releasing. To build out the different design variations for different design components, like let's say a banner, we've actually created an API that you can access in React so that those different variations are simply created by passing different props into those React components. And we've created an API playground in that same style guide so that you can list out all of the different props that are made available to you and pick and choose your different customizations and watch the live demo update along with the code beneath it. As you play around and try different variations and customizations, the demo is going to update, as will the code samples below. And you'll actually be able to toggle through both React views and HTML views, so you can always have a sense of what's actually happening under the hood with the code. But remember, if you use the React version of this code, you're going to get at using our API, which is going to be a lot easier to reason about, and it'll be a lot simpler to maintain. So So the style guide is going to be really the home to learn about all aspects of our design system, including building out the UI components themselves and how they bring Polaris to life. So this marks a bit of a change for us. We're going all in with React and hope you come join us in this decision. UI development has changed a lot over the years, and we're building increasingly interactive experiences. And so that's why we really have to go beyond just providing these static assets that you have to put together yourself. We want to think about the HTML underneath. We want to be providing smart default event callbacks so that you're starting to think about the interactions as well. And our React components are going to help you do exactly that. We chose React because we wanted something that made it easy to organize a large application in an understandable way. React also has a really big, very active developer community, a lot of learning resources, and has great developer tooling that we can build on top of. We also know that JavaScript is the most widely used language by Shopify app developers, so we're really excited to bring a modern tool into this community. The components are going to be most easily read about in that style guide, but we are going to be releasing on GitHub a full project that has all of the code necessary so you can really get under the hood and into the details. Look at our testing, look at how things are actually being organized. We're going to be releasing the package on NPM as well. We're committed to using React in the long term. These are the exact same components that we're using internally to build up Shopify's internal UI. We're going to be consumers of the same API just like you. So as we make improvements to that API, we're going to make those improvements available right back to you, so we're all building off of the same tool set. If you're not quite ready for React, you are still going to have access to those static styles and the compiled HTML. But choosing React will help you build for the long term as well, because you'll be taking advantage of our API. Updates will be much simpler, and we have the potential to start releasing developer tools on top of it as well that you'll be able to take advantage of. As we adopt React ourselves, we are going to feel some of those same challenges in moving to a new stack. It can be hard. We get it. So we want to help along the way. As you start using these tools, please start leaving your questions and your feedback in our GitHub repo. It's going to be a really great way to give us that feedback and tell us how we can do better. We're going to be keeping our style guide up to date, and we're going to be releasing a few sample demo apps to help you get started. I'm actually going to run through one quickly right now. So we're going to be building a form in a specific layout. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install React and Polaris through NPM. Next, we're going to import the specific components that we need for this view, so you can actually see all the ones that we're going to need to leverage from Polaris. Because we want it rendered in a specific layout, we're going to first bring in our layout component. And we can drop in text in the title just through props. Next, we're going to add our form component. And in here, again, through different React props, we can actually set the values for our different text fields, their help text, and actually start binding some event callbacks. Finally, we're going to add a button to actually submit. I can quickly reference the style guide to double check that this is the right kind of button, or make a decision on maybe using a different style, but we're going to go with primary for now. Back in our main view, we're going to import the Polaris styles, which are also going to be available through NPM. And once you build it using whichever build system you're currently using, you're going to get something that looks like this bottom half of the screen. It's a full form, and it looks like Shopify with that few lines of code. So it's not a very complicated example, but you can get a sense of the power that this is going to give you. Because this markup is accessible, it works with keyboards, it's got the error states that are going to be made visible as well, all with that few lines of code. So this is just one single user flow, but imagine building an entire app in this way, and the seamless experience that you'll build that matches directly into the rest of the Shopify Chrome. And now put yourself in the hands and mindset of a merchant who's using multiple Polaris-themed apps at the same time, and the seamless experience that they will have moving from app to app and back to our admin. Partners are still going to be visible in this, but the merchant experience is going to be consistent and seamless, and they're going to be feeling productive and successful a lot faster. That's what Polaris can do.
So we're incredibly excited to be sharing our internal platform with you. Using Polaris is how we build the Shopify that we want to build. Polaris is our North Star. It's our way of saying that we're doing this as a team. And because we all want our merchants to be successful, we know that the best way for us to do that is by doing all of this together. So the new UI will be launching to merchants at the end of May. And with Polaris, we're giving you a head start. With the detailed documentation and smart tooling it provides, it's the perfect tool to get you up and running really quickly. We also want your feedback as you're using it. This is the first time that we've done something like this, and we know there's going to be ways to make it better. So leading up to the new UI release and afterwards, we want to hear how things are going using Polaris. Please leave any issues, questions, feedback that you have on our GitHub repo, or get in touch with any of our development relations team or with Monica and I directly. Polaris is available right now at polaris.shopify.com. So visit it, start reading the docs, and start playing with our demos. There's way more in here than we showed off today, so we're really excited for you to discover it all.
Let's use Polaris to build a consistent Shopify together. Thanks.
Thanks. So it looks like we have about 7 minutes for questions. Is that
Yep,
right?
something like that.
So
So we'll take a few off of the app as well as from the audience. I guess we can start with an audience question, if there are any.
And I think there's a mic we can run to anyone if they have a question.
Thank you.
Sure. Can we? Do you want to wait for the mic if that's okay? Oh, we'll get you after this one. Sorry.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, my question is about migration. How is going to happen? We have to have our apps ready someday, and everything is going to change that day in Shopify.
Sorry, I got a little bit of noise behind, so it's hard to hear.
The thing is, there is a date when everything is going to change in the Shopify, and we have to have our apps ready to that day.
Right, so the new UI will be launching at the end of May, and the new app frame will support sort of the apps that you've already created that are in the embedded app SDK. That we're hoping that by switching to Polaris, by using Polaris, you'll be able to get ready in time for that launch switch, but it'll be okay if you're not quite there for it. But we're really hoping that your apps do update over the next few months. I think we had a question here.
Thanks, guys. I was wondering what build system you're currently using with React, and if the components are going to be completely open sourced.
We're not going to be releasing the build tools immediately because we're still trying to find the best system internally. I think we're still experimenting on the specific build tool internally. And then once that gets into a more stable spot, we'll consider releasing the build tool itself publicly as well.
Yeah, and the components are fully open, so you can visit the GitHub repo and read through all of the coding there. And there's tests available in the component library as well.
Yeah, the components are going to be made public, just not the build tool yet.
Yeah. Does that answer your question? Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Looks like we got one over there.
Hi, I've got a question up the back. That's all right. This looks awesome. I'm really pumped. Thanks a lot for the work.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, with the new admin UI, is it possible for developers to get access to that before it launches, so we can sort of test it out, see how our apps work in the new UI framework? Is that going to be happening? Is it going to be a beta program? What's that looking like?
So there is a page layout component that you'll have access to as part of Polaris that you can kind of see what the app frame especially will look like. You won't have access to the title bar or the navigation with that, but you'll be able to see sort of how the render looks like inside of that app frame. And the UI kit itself has those fully built page examples, so you can kind of get a sense of what your app will look like using that. There's a question over there. I think we had one there as well.
Yeah, 2 over on that side.
In front, I think, was first.
Wave.
Yeah, wait. I guess there were no questions from the tablet.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay. So what is the risk of us updating our apps now to Polaris before this rolls out to merchants? I think that elaborates on the first question on the timing of when we should launch this.
Yeah, that's a really great question, actually. So it would be great if you actually don't launch your apps in Polaris. That sounds like it would be really quick, so that would be awesome if you could do that. But don't launch your apps in Polaris until after we've done our UI switch. I think that'll make the most sense because we really want that consistent experience for our merchants. So ideally, you kind of like, we can probably give you a little bit of a heads up as to when we'll be actually pulling the trigger. It'll be towards the end of May. And then once you have that date, you can kind of switch with us on the same time. I'll just repeat it. It's cool.
Last time when I rolled the version 2, it was a slow rollout for merchants. Is this a big bang? Or how's that work?
Yeah, it'll be a big bang. Yeah. Oh, sorry, the question was, will this be a slow rollout or will it be released all at once? And we're going to release everything across our apps, like our native apps, the web product, and our marketing pages all at once. So we're excited for you to see it. Questions in the back?
So I have a kind of a two-part question then. Will the embedded app SDK change with Polaris? And then specifically, will we have access to adding, say, a sub-menu to the left-hand menu in the admin for like a sub-menu for our app? That would really, I think, improve also the experience for merchants.
The EA SDK is going to be updated to allow you to plug into the, to provide your logo and all of the partner links. And I don't know that there's any plans right now to add specific app references on the left-hand nav. I don't think that that's.
Yeah, we haven't planned for any navigation updates right now, but be interested to hear like why that might be a really like a better experience. We could probably have that conversation in the GitHub repo or something like that.
Thank you.
I think we can take one more question.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think there was one right there. Yeah.
Trying to release Photoshop kit.
Sorry, can you repeat? The mic was on and off.
Question is, are you planning to launch the UI kit in Photoshop? Currently, it's available on Sketch only.
No, we'll just be releasing it in Sketch. It's one of those things that we're opinionated about. That's where we work, so we want you to work alongside us there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, everyone.
We're going to be around today and tomorrow.